Hi, and welcome to Ontario Waterway Cruises. My name is Marc Ackert. I'm the captain of the Kawartha Voyageur. Our family has been operating the Kawartha Voyageur for the last 39 years across Ontario, delivering 5-day overnight journeys through the Trent-Severn Waterway and the Rideau Canal. I'm going to take you through a little bit of our journeys in a presentation today that's going to have a mixture of some video and some still slides of areas that we travel. But when we have our passengers come on board, quite often they want to know, where do we come from? How did you get into this boating? Well, we're beef farmers from Bruce County, and we have a little introductory video that explains some of our family history.
Following their retirement from full-time farming in 1978, Lloyd and Helen Ackert continued to live on the family farm, providing meals and accommodation to farm vacationers.
He thought, what about putting our farm vacation guests on water? So if you would, he set up a business akin to like a floating country inn, and that is the beginning of our company.
As founder of Ontario Waterway Cruises, Lloyd spearheaded the development of the business through the 80s.
And in 1991, it was evident Mom and Dad were interested in retiring from this company.
When I joined my brother in the business, we bought the business from our parents in 1993.
We all grew up very at ease around machinery, and also very adept at keeping machinery properly taken care of.
We expanded the boat in 1995 and again in 2000.
It was a very fascinating time in our family's life. The scheduling of construction and physically, it was a hands-on type of construction job. A lot of our family members were involved in the construction.
Dad passed on in 2011, but he will always be remembered for his personal interest, enthusiasm, and attention to detail. A remedy for success that he instilled in us and everyone he worked with.
Still share duties of the captain responsibility between my brother and I, and our wives are supporting us from the office and shoreside.
We don't have a board of directors. Our board of directors is our passengers, and over the years we've attempted to listen carefully to what our passengers are looking for in a vacation experience.
And then to see that total package at the end of the journey, the tears and the hugs and the goodbyes and we'll see you again soon, that piece is a battery charger for me personally. Now that you know a little bit about us, where do we operate? Across Ontario, there's a number of naturally occurring lakes and river systems that intertwine between Ottawa and Georgian Bay. You might recognize names like the Kawartha Lakes or the Rideau Lakes, rivers like the Cataraqui or the Severn. And as the mariner goes across Ontario, it's very much on a natural body of water. There are hills and valleys as you're driving across Ontario with your car. So what happens when you're in a boat and you come to a hill or a valley? That's where the lock system comes in. The Trent-Severn Waterway has 45 locks stretching between Georgian Bay and the Bay of Quinte. The Rideau Canal has 49 locks stretching between Kingston and Ottawa. Some places there is not a natural body of water joining our travels, so there's man-made portions. Some are quite short, just a couple of 100 yards to join the lock chamber to the river. Other places, these man-made channels are quite long. We have one up by Balsam Lake that's over 5 miles long, joining Balsam Lake to the Kirkfield lift lock. Parks Canada operate our national parks, and through the canal systems of the Trent-Severn Waterway and the Rideau Canal, they provide all the daily operation of the lock gates opening and closing. They're responsible for all the maintenance and the grounds keeping. And Parks is also responsible for all the water management through this area of Ontario. There's 168 dams stretching from Georgian Bay down to Lake Ontario on the Trent-Severn Waterway, and Parks Canada gets little public credit for such a valuable job to keep our communities safe for water management. Parks is also responsible for all of the aids to navigation. The buoys, the red ones, the green ones, they're in the right place. That's Parks Canada's job on our nation's waterways. So where exactly do we operate? Well, here at Big Chute Marine Railway is one of the starts of a journey. This is up by Georgian Bay by Bidlin, and the Trent-Severn Waterway continues down through Lake Simcoe, through Peterborough, down the Trent River and Rice Lake into the Bay of Quinte by Trenton. The Rideau Canal stretches between Kingston up through eastern Ontario, little communities like Westport, Smith Falls, Merrickville, and more or less the ship just goes all summer from Ottawa to Big Chute and back. But we have three very distinctive journeys. The Ottawa to Kingston, we call that our Rideau cruise. The Kingston to Peterborough section, we call our Quinte cruise. And the Peterborough to Big Chute, we call our Kawartha cruise. I'm going to walk you through each of our different journeys, and we'll start with our Kawartha cruise from Peterborough to Big Chute. So this journey takes us through the bulk of the Kawartha Lakes and up through Lake Simcoe and the city of Orillia and up through Lake Couchiching up to Big Chute Marine Railway.
The Trent-Severn Waterway was built over a period of 90 years with a wide variety of engineering.
Of the 22 locks we travel through, there are some manually operated heritage locks as well as modern hydraulic locks built to service the areas of heavier boat traffic. Here are some things that can be seen and enjoyed along the Kawartha cruise. Experience the thrilling ride of the Great Peterborough Lift Lock with a lift or drop of 65 feet. Walk around the downtown streets of Bobcaygeon, which are a haven for tourists seeking unique shopping. Stop at the scenic town of Buckhorn and play bocce ball while the sun goes down. After passing through the Rosedale Lock, we enter Balsam Lake. This is the highest point of elevation on the waterway, about 220 feet above Peterborough. See the Kawartha Voyageur lifted or lowered 49 feet at the Kirkfield Lift Lock, or choose to stay on for the ride. Cross Lake Simcoe, which is the largest body of water on the system. Stop in Orillia for the night and take in the sights of downtown. Cruise across Lake Couchiching and enter the Severn River. Sit back and enjoy the rocky grandeur as we make our way to the final highlight, the Big Chute Marine Railway.
Now, all of our passengers that come on the Kawartha cruise, you are responsible to find this parking lot. This is the Holiday Inn in Peterborough. Our passengers come by car, park right adjacent to the ship. We take your luggage right out of the trunk of your car, on board we go, and your car stays right there in that parking lot while you travel with us. When we get underway from Peterborough, the first morning out, we come to the Peterborough Lift Lock. It's the world's highest lift lock. Many of you have probably seen it. It's a very, very interesting feature built in 1904, and it delivers service every day to the boaters, much the same way as when it was originally constructed. If you don't know about the engineering of the lift lock, it's very much like a teeter-totter. The two bathtubs are full of water, and the upper chamber has 1 foot of extra water, which is the weight to push that one down and the other one up. When we're on the top of the Peterborough lift lock, we're another 22 feet high. You get a pretty good view up there. You can pretty well see Lake Ontario from the top of the lift lock. Now, as we leave the Peterborough area, we're going up the Otonabee River and we come to the little community of Lakefield. And here at Lakefield, we'll join up with the Kawartha Lakes. And one of the first lakes we come to is Stony Lake. This cute little church is on an island on Stony Lake called St. Peter's on the Rock. The minister lives on the island for the summertime, delivering service to the cottagers throughout the summertime. And if you're interested in a place to get married, very, very beautiful spot to hold a wedding. Up from the church, we have a little spot called Juniper Island. Now, this is an old steamboat landing. Today, it's actually run by the Stony Lake Cottage Association, and they have swimming lessons for the kiddies and sailing regattas out of here throughout the summertime. Just after Stony Lake, up through Burley Falls, we're going to come to this lock. This is Lovesick. And if you're around in your car this summer looking for a place for a nice picnic, you're not going to find Lovesick. This is a water access lock only, meaning there's no road access. All the equipment that's used to construct the lock chamber, the operation personnel, they all have to come back and forth by boat every day from Burley Falls. Very popular spot for the recreational boats to spend overnight. On our first overnight stop coming from Peterborough, we come here to Buckhorn, and we tie up right downtown at the locks. We have a nice little overnight stop there. People can get out and stroll around the community. It's a lovely spot. The next morning, we're underway. We're going up Pigeon Lake, and we arrive at Bob Cajun. Now, Bob Cajun is the home of the houseboat center of the Kawartha Lakes. Huge rental houseboat fleets around the Bob Cajun area. They're always fun to watch. When we come around the corner and they look at us, people just go everywhere. Our passengers take a little stop in Bob Cajun to go for a walk uptown. One of their destinations is this Bigley's store, right on the cornerstone of the downtown. And folks, it's a shoe store, and they do a good job at selling shoes. They've been in business over 100 years at that location. Once we get all the ladies back on board, we get underway up Sturgeon Lake. We're now coming to the little community of Fenland Falls. Fenland Falls, we have a late afternoon stop for folks to get out and stroll around the community. And on this night, we continue past Fenland Falls up to the Kirkfield lift lock for our overnight stop. As we come to Kirkfield, I mentioned that 5-mile channel. Well, what really it is, it joins two sides of the nation's watershed. So we have a divide in the Trent-Severn Waterway. Balsam Lake, all of its water flows downbound through Peterborough, down through Rice Lake to Trenton and the Bay of Quinte. But north and west of Balsam Lake, when you get into Lake Simcoe and the Severn River, all that water flows into Georgian Bay. So in order to join the two sides of the hill, they had to dig this man-made channel 5 miles through the limestone to transit the canal. This was built in 1907. At the end of the channel is the Kirkfield lift lock. Not quite as big as Peterborough. It's about a 49-foot lift instead of the 65 at Peterborough, and it's a little newer. This lock was built in 1907. After we go down in the Kirkfield lift lock, we're now traveling down through Canal Lake up to Bolsover, and we at Bolsover join a channel with 5 locks in a row down to Lake Simcoe. 3 of the locks are close enough together you can actually get out and walk from one lock chamber to the other. Once we get to the last lock at Gamebridge, we get everybody back on board. We cross Lake Simcoe and we arrive in Orillia for our overnight stop. We do arrive after supper. Most of downtown has closed up. So we stick around the next morning till about noon so passengers can see the Stephen Leacock home, take a browse around our shops downtown. Once we get underway, our last overnight stop is out on Sparrow Lake, lovely little community called Port Stanton. At Port Stanton, well known because of the Bayview Wildwood Resort, but also just up at the top of the dock is this great little church. It's over 100 years old, and one of the local historians, Mr. Stanton, comes and opens it up for us so our passengers can see inside, and there's been some great sing-songs that have been held in that church with our passengers. Now, the next morning, we're leaving Port Stanton, heading down the Severn River. This area of Ontario is quite different from where we've been before. A lot of the Severn River has no road access, so it limits the population growth along the canal shore. So it's a very rugged area. We have one lock on this day. It's called the Swift Rapids Lock. It is the largest conventional lock chamber on the Trent-Severn Waterway, lifting boats 47 feet in one lock. After you go by Swift Rapids, we're coming down through Severn Falls, and we arrive at the Big Chute Marine Railway. Now, once we arrive at the Big Chute, this is the end of our trip. We are too big to go on the Marine Railway, but recreational craft can continue their journey down through the Big Chute. Another 7 miles they're into Georgian Bay at Port Severn. When we arrive here, our passengers are just finishing their lunch, and we have an opportunity for them to walk around and see this place in operation. It's really fantastic. This summer, if you're driving around Ontario in your car, going up Highway 69 to Parry Sound, you're going to see a sign just above Port Severn that says White Falls Road, Big Chute Marine Railway. Go back in there about 10 kilometers and spend the afternoon. It's quite a spot. And once we gather up all our passengers from walking around, our motor coach is waiting, and all of our passengers that have come up from Peterborough get on the boat and on the bus, and they head now back down to their cars in Peterborough. Now the ship is sitting at Big Chute, that bus is en route down to Peterborough. The next cruise will be Big Chute to Peterborough. that cruise, passengers will still drive to Peterborough and they'll get on this bus. The one that the passengers get off, they'll get on, come back up to the ship and begin their journey. So all of our cruise, there's one way by boat and one way by bus. Now we're going to talk about the Quinte cruise a little bit, the Peterborough to Kingston section. On this cruise, Peterborough is still the base of operation. You still come to the Holiday Inn in Peterborough to park your car in order to join us on this holiday called the Quinte cruise. On this trip, there's a variety of aspects to our journey. We have 3 days in the Trent-Severn Waterway, and then we have a couple of days on the Bay of Quinte and the Thousand Islands, Lake Ontario, St. Lawrence River.
Here are some things that can be seen and enjoyed along the way. Floating down the Otonabee River is like a Georgia River cruise. Get off and stroll the town of Campbellford for a while. The chocolate factory and local markets are a popular visit for our passengers. Leave the history of the Trent-Severn behind as we make our way into the open waters of the Bay of Quinte up to the St. Lawrence River.
So we're in the official shipping lanes with the Great Lakes freighters, and passengers are quite often able to see a passing 730-footer. Kind of reminds us that we're not a big fish in the pond, coming out of the Trent-Severn Waterway and the Rideau, where we are the biggest fish in the pond.
See the state-of-the-art Trenton Air Force Museum.
We'll have a private visit after supper. The museum curator and executive director will meet our passengers. And our passengers have quite a bond to a lot of the stories at the Air Force Museum.
One of the most fabulous experiences to be found on North American waters is to spend several relaxing hours cruising the Thousand Islands.
To help us with some of that history in this area, we do bring on an interpreter from the Thousand Islands area.
Visit the town of Gananoque. Explore the rich history of Kingston, where the Kawartha Voyageur docks for the night.
As we begin this journey coming out of Peterborough, immediately you'll notice a drastic change in scenery from our last trip. Coming out of Peterborough, we're on the Otonabee River here, and it's about 26 miles long down to Rice Lake, and in that time, the river's elevation, it only fluctuates in inches. So the surrounding area is a lot of rural agricultural land, windy old river. If you want turtles, this is the trip. As we go around every bend, there's dead logs in the river laden with turtles. Now, once we get down into Rice Lake, we're going to join up with a community at Hastings and the Trent River. The Trent River is going to take us all the way down to Trenton. This river is very large compared to the Otonabee. There's a lot of capacity to move water in this part of Ontario, so the dams are huge. This is the dam at Healy Falls, just outside of Hastings. It's 80 feet high, holding back the Trent River. Here's an aerial of the whole area of Healy Falls, the dam on the lower left of the picture holding the river back. Down the channel, you'll come to the lock station and the power generating station. A lot of these locks in the lower portion of the Trent-Severn Waterway utilize that river for hydro generation and have indeed a hydro generator attached. At Healy Falls, they have to get the boats down 80 feet. So how do they do that? They have a flight lock. You go into the first lock chamber, down 27 feet, and the gates open up in front of us. We're right in the next lock. Then we go down another 27 feet. Then there's a little pond, and the third lock takes us down into the river. After we get underway from Healy Falls, our next lock is lock number 14, Crow Bay. A few years ago, Parks Canada had this Green Thumb Award. They reward the lock operators that made little gardens and helped beautify the property. This was Lock 14's attempt at a garden. Lock 14 is actually Crow Bay, just north of Campbellford. You can see the big dam holding back the river on the left, the lock station, and there'd be a power generating station just off the picture to the right. Just after Crow Bay, we come into Campbellford. We have a little stop in Campbellford. Like the movie said, passengers get out, go for a stroll. And yes, a lot of them do get up to that chocolate factory. It's uphill the whole way to get there from the dock, which is great. When you're laden with your chocolate bags, it's downhill all the way back to the boat. Now, as we leave Campbellford, the man-made channel is going to come and join up with the natural flow of the Trent River. We have another flight lock here. It's called Rainy Falls. Now, Rainy Falls is not quite as big as Healy Falls. It's a 48-foot drop, so there's two 24-foot chambers. There's also at Rainy Falls a great suspension bridge that goes across the canal. And this suspension bridge was built about 15 years ago, and it joins the national park side over to the provincial park south of Campbellford. A fantastic walk if you're up to it. Be a little bit on the lookout for some of the community kids. They love waiting until Grandma and Grandpa get halfway across the bridge before they jump on the other end. Now, as we leave Campbellford, you're going to come down through Haig's Reach and Myers. We're going to come to Percy Reach, lock number 8. Here, passengers can get out and stroll around. They can watch the ship go up or down through the lock chamber. And the next lock we're coming to is Glen Ross, lock number 7. This train bridge at Glen Ross is no longer in service, obviously, but the local kids do use it as a diving board when the Kawartha goes by to show off their talents to jump from the top. Now we're coming into the Trenton area. The Trent River is going to have some industry showing up on its shores. You've probably motored across that road at the top of the picture. That's the 401 at Trenton. But did you ever look just off the top? The lock number 2, Sydney, of the Trent-Severn Waterway is just beside the bridge. And if you've ever taken Via Rail across Ontario up to Kingston, you went right over top of lock number 1 of the Trent-Severn Waterway. And the movie said we had a stop at Trenton for the Air Force Museum. It's a wonderful outing, and indeed they open up after hours, so it's just a private viewing for our passengers. There's an outside air park as well as some interior museum. The mainstay of the museum is this Halifax bomber. It was brought out of a fjord after being shot down in the Second World War. Only about 20 years ago. In 700 feet of water it had laid since the 1944 downing. They brought it up, and the volunteers brought it over to Trenton, Ontario, and thousands of volunteer hours have painfully put this Halifax bomber back together. It is the only surviving, fully intact Halifax bomber in the world, and Trenton is quite proud of having it in their museum. Now, as we leave Trenton, we're on the Bay of Quinte. This is a different body of water. A lot more sailboats on the Bay of Quinte. The Trent-Severn Waterway is limited with a lot of bridges at about 20 feet high, and the Bay of Quinte, the bridges are 65 feet high, which allows it to be a great area for sailing. Our next night, we come down to the little community of Picton and have our overnight stop. The next morning after we leave Picton, we're going up by the Glenora Ferries, the Adolphustown Reach, and we work our way up along the north shore of Lake Ontario, the Long Reach. There's some industry along the side of the lake. This is the Lafarge Cement up by Bath. And we go past Kingston, working our way to our last overnight stop of Gananoque, right in the heart of the Thousand Islands. Lovely little town for people to get out and stroll around on their last night. The next morning when we get up, we actually continue traveling farther east on the river. We come down under the Canadian span of the Thousand Islands Bridge, and we come as far east as Rockport. And at Rockport, we hop over to the south side of the river around the Alexandria Bay area, and we cruise back up the US side of the river to get to Kingston. Now, we don't stop in the United States, so there's no need of having a passport or anything like that. We're simply sailing through international waters. On our way up through this area, we go by Bolt Castle. Some of you may have been here in your past. Over the last 25 years, Bolt Castle has really been transformed. The Thousand Islands Bridge Authority took it over in 1974 and have had a mission of stabilizing, not to complete George Bolt's castle. Their mission was only to bring it back to its previous glory of the day that George Bolt walked out when his wife passed away. So after we go up through this area, we're coming back up into Kingston, and we're now arriving into Kingston Harbor. Old Fort Henry sitting up on the shore, protecting the Kingston fortiments, and we end up in Kingston at the dock, where our chartered coach is once again sitting. All of our passengers are boarding our bus, heading back up to their cars in Peterborough. Now the ship is in Kingston, being prepared for a Rideau Canal cruise. Passengers that take our Rideau Canal cruise now come to Kingston. Our base of operation switches for the Rideau. We still use the Holiday Inn, but it's the Kingston Waterfront Holiday Inn where you park your car. The ship is right adjacent to the Holiday Inn, and you board in Kingston.
The Rideau Canal is one of the country's engineering marvels. Cut through the rock and bush, it continues to amaze travelers today.
When Colonel By dug the channel, it was a very defined, very narrow channel, only about 50 feet wide.
The Rideau cruise travels 125 miles, and 37 historic locks are between Kingston and Ottawa. The Rideau Canal is operated by Parks Canada, and the entire stretch has been declared a National Historic Site. Passengers get to see the locks operate just as they did over 170 years ago. Passengers can occasionally step off and watch the ship from shore as it rises or falls with the water level. Here are some things that can be seen and enjoyed along the way. A visit at Chaffee's Lock to see the lock swing bridge beautifully framed by gardens and heritage buildings.
And at Smith Falls, the home headquarters of the Rideau Canal is housed in the old Woods Mill right adjacent to the dock. And they'll stay late for our passengers, and they'll do a guided journey to the museum before dinner.
Enjoy everyone's favorite stop at Jones Falls.
Merrickville has become quite a little getaway for people looking for a Sunday drive. A lot of our passengers will take in the blockhouse, which was Colonel By's largest military installation here on the Rideau.
Kingston was the first capital city of Upper Canada, and many buildings reflect the grandeur of the past.
As we begin our journey up the Rideau, our passengers begin to admire one man, Colonel John By. Colonel John By was a British military engineer who was sent here by the British government in 1826 to build a military installation. The fear was if another attack from the United States should ever block the St. Lawrence River, Britain would lose the upper colony and the ability to send supplies. So the idea was brought about to bring the ships over from England to Montreal, up the Ottawa River to Ottawa, and then make a backdoor entrance down into the upper lakes. This became the Rideau Canal. And between 1826 and 1832, Colonel By and his men achieved just that, building the Rideau Canal. The Rideau is a lot smaller, quite tight for us to get around in a lot of area, but the canal we travel through today is exactly the canal that Colonel By left behind in 1832. This is a little lock chamber called Washburn or Lower Brewers, just north of Kingston. You can see the swing bridge here. A lot of these little swing bridges on the Rideau. There are no push buttons and hydraulics involved here. This is simply lock staff coming up to the edge of the bridge and giving it a push. And it swings out of the way so that we can get by. Colonel By in 1826 had a lot of challenges in the bush of eastern Ontario. One of them was actually in canal building. At that time, engineering around a canal was limited by their abilities. Their lock chambers could only be built about 15 feet high. So anytime the elevation changes in the landscape of more than 15 feet, Colonel By would have to build multiple locks. Here, our first night out is Jones Falls, just up by Elgin. Colonel By came across a 60-foot change in elevation. So how do you get boats up a 60-foot elevation? 4 locks. Now, 3 of them are in a staircase, one right after the other. You simply come out of the one lock directly into the next one. And then the 4th one, Colonel By built like a little pond with a 4th one set up by itself. This is where we spend our overnight, is up at this top lock. One of my most favorite spots that the ship stays is here at Jones Falls. The next morning we leave Jones Falls, we're heading up to the area of Alpinicon Lake. We come to Chaffee's Lock. We have a little stop at Chaffee's for passengers to get out and stroll around. And at Chaffee's, while you're walking around the property, there's an old lodge here called the Alpinicon Lodge. It was an old family lakeside lodge for generations. A few years ago, a young couple from Ottawa bought into the property and took it over and have begun to bring it back to its previous glory days. If you haven't been to Chaffee's for a while, stop by the Opinicon. It's amazing the transformation that place has underwent. As we leave Chaffee's, we're coming up through now Indian Lake, Clear Lake, Newborough Lake, and we go by this little ferry. This is a hand-operated cable ferry. When you come along with your car, you put your car on the ferry, you get out, and you pull the chain over to the other side, and that's how you get to the other side. Our passengers always wonder, what happens if you come and the ferry's on the wrong side? Well, just take a look in the weeds. There's some rowboats there. You just flip a rowboat, go get the ferry, and bring it back to your car. After we go by Newborough, we're now traveling on Upper Rideau Lake, and we come to this little community called Westport. Well, now Westport is a lovely spot for passengers to get out and stroll around. Some will take the challenge of walking up to where I took this picture. This is called Foley Mountain. It's a fantastic outlook over the community. Not for everybody to hike up there in the afternoon, but if you do, it's well rewarded. Westport is also interesting. It's kind of like Kirkfield Liftlock. It's the summit of the Rideau Canal. So like the Trent-Severn had a divide at Balsam Lake, the Rideau Canal has a divide at Upper Rideau Lake here at Westport. So the mariner traveling from Kingston to Ottawa goes upstream all the way to Westport. And then when they get to Westport, they start going downstream through all the locks to get to Ottawa. So our first lock after Westport is called the Narrows. Here we begin our downbound descent towards Ottawa. The Narrows is also home to one of these blockhouses. Colonel By was a military man, always under constant threat during construction that the U.S. would somehow attack his works. So he stationed troops at various sites while the canal was being constructed in these blockhouses. Today, the blockhouses are used for interpretive purposes. This one at the Narrows is the office of the lock staff and some washrooms for the boaters, but all these blockhouses are actually still around. After we leave the Narrows, we're traveling down Big Rideau Lake, through Lake Portland and Rideau Ferry, joining up with Lower Rideau Lake, and our overnight stop is actually at Punamali. This is where the Rideau Lakes merge and become the Rideau River. Now the next morning we leave Punamali, our first stop is in Smith Falls, and as the movie suggested, we have a little visit to the Woods Mill. It's Parks Canada's headquarters and home of the Rideau Canal Museum. After we get everyone back on board, we're heading down to Merrickville and a lovely little lock called Kilmarnock on the way. One of my favorite. There's only about a 2-foot drop in elevation here at Kilmarnock. You see another one of those lovely swing bridges to swing out of the way. After we go through Kilmarnock, we're coming into Merrickville for our overnight stop. At Merrickville, you'll see right downtown the largest of Colonel By's military installations, the blockhouse. We tie up right in the park beside the blockhouse for our overnight stop. After we underway the next morning, we're going down through an area known as Clowes and Nicholson's and Burrett's Rapids. I took a picture of the dam here at Clowes to give you an idea of Colonel By's water management. He built these fantastic dams because they basically self-regulate the water level on the Rideau. If there's extra, it simply goes over. If there's not enough, it's called a drought. Just past this lock of Clowes, we come to the Nicholson's lock. And there's 2 lock chambers here. They're about a half a mile apart, a lower station and an upper station. The passengers can actually get out and walk from one lock to the other along the canal shore. After we go through Nicholson's, Burrett's Rapids, we join the Rideau River. We have about a 26-mile section down through Kempville, Cars, Manotick, and our last overnight stop is here at the Long Island Locks. In front of the ship, one of the true engineering marvels of Colonel By is the Stone Arch Dam here at Long Island. Folks, that's holding back 26 miles of river. It was built in 1828 with individual hand-cut stones, one on top of the other. There's not a leak in that dam anywhere today. Absolutely an engineering marvel. When we're here for the evening, just up about 2 miles away, is the old Watson's Mill at Manotick. We have a bus, those that are interested before dinner, we can have a little visit up to the mill so people can look around. So now we're on our way down to Ottawa, the end of our journey. We tie up at the Hartwell Locks right by Carleton University, and our passengers are met by the motor coach to take everybody down to their cars in Kingston. We prepare the ship and get ready for our next journey, and early evening those new group of passengers come up from our base in Kingston. So that's a little bit about the different cruises. Now let's discuss a little bit about the ship itself.
Kawartha Voyageur is a 45-passenger, 13-crew-member boat equipped with all the common luxuries you would find on a vacation retreat. Quiet engines, ease of boarding, gentle ride, air conditioning, and an elevator between the cabin and dining room. But what really makes this boat unique is how it's been customized for the journey it does.
The ship itself was originally designed and built by our family. We had very, very specific needs to put in a small space. You'll notice daily that the ship has been specifically adapted to fit some of the parameters of the waterway. All bridges on the waterway are set at a 22-foot height off the water level. We stand 34 feet off the water level as you approach the Kawartha Voyageur. So how does a 34-foot vessel get under a 22-foot bridge?
One of the features of the Kawartha Voyageur is that we have to collapse the wheelhouse so that we can fit underneath bridges. Operator then has to put their head outside of a sunroof so that they can still operate the ship.
The sun awning at the back that rests on the railing level, and indeed our passengers as well have to sit down as we go under these low bridges. This ship sitting here is 120 feet long. Colonel By built 108-foot lock chambers. So you might say, how do you put a 120-foot boat in a 108-foot lock? Well, you'll find out the bow raises up and creates a 12-foot shortage to the vessel, which allows us to go into the lock chamber.
So with it down, it's a useful space for people to sit and watch the canal go by. But when we come to a shorter lock, then we have to get everyone to come inside and then fold the bow up to get into the lock.
So yeah, the low bridges, they're low. Now you don't have to get paranoid and lay on the floor here, folks, but the bridge is about that high above your head. So pay attention when we say we're all to be taking a seat. It's pretty real. Here we're just getting ready to go under a bridge. This is a better picture going under the bridge, the Gannon's Narrows Bridge up on Pigeon Lake. You'll see at the back of the ship, the radar arch and the sun awning, everything's been lowered down. Our passengers are all lowered down. Our wheelhouse is all lowered down, and then we go under the bridge. Some days we have like 10 bridges to go under. Other days, maybe 1 or 2. So the top deck activity is very much dictated by these bridges. The cabins on the ship, yes, they're small. We have a lot to put in a Rideau Canal lock, but you got everything you need in there. There's individual climate control, heating, air conditioning. There's places to put your clothes and hang up your stuff, toilet, wash basin, window. The showers are down the hall. We don't have the showers in the cabins. There's 13 crew that deliver service on the Kawartha Voyageur on all of our sailings, and between the navigation and the hospitality. However, probably your favorite two are the 2 young ladies with the white coats down here. They're our cooks. They feed you.
We actually do the hand picking ourselves of all of our fruits and vegetables so that we can see that everything is 100% in good quality when we are sending it to the ship. We do our best to try to stay as local as possible. When passengers are on board with us, the most common thing that we hear about our food is that they're shocked and impressed that everything is made from scratch.
Yeah, the meals are fantastic. I don't think you get meals any better than anywhere you want to go than on this trip here.
The meals are very good. When you have your tour of the kitchen, you'll find out they haven't got a very big workspace back there, but they cook all the stuff fresh for us.
Homemade food, home-cooked food, it's lovely.
Certainly well done and well presented, and you can have as much as you like.
And there's a cookbook that you can buy that has all the recipes in it too.
They make you really feel at home.
So we also get our local bakery here to make our French bread and our pumpernickel. Thanks, Romina.
Enjoy.
Okay. And we're almost done picking our order, and we'll be ready to head back to our warehouse.
The Ontario Waterway Cruises Warehouse is where all of the supplies for the 5-day journey are stored and organized. Everything is then loaded in the company van and trailer to be transported to meet the ship. At the start of every journey, the ship's supplies are restocked.
Starting at 6:30 in the morning, they're preparing everything for that day, and every 2 hours we're putting out either a main dish or a snack for our passengers.
We cook all of our food here, fresh daily on the ship.
Everything's prepared by a set schedule, so they get breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and also snacks and cookies.
Making the 300 cookies every day, rolling out fresh cookies every day. Fresh muffins are made every morning with our great homemade jam that Joy provides for us. Everything is plated per passenger, so if someone is not fond of something, then they can just let our server know. So it's getting the meal that you are actually wanting. The passengers coming together, sitting at every mealtime, it's like a big family coming together and having a family feast. I believe that the passengers are what makes us so successful, for sure.
Here's a picture of our two young ladies in the galley. We have very limited capabilities for them to create their magic. The ship does have a set menu and a structured meal time, and these young ladies prepare everything from scratch all day long for our journeys. This is a shot of our dining room. We set up, all passengers eat at one time. This is half of our dining room set up for lunch. And then, whoops, 2 hours later, it's time for dinner. Now, food is not our only activity. In order to create all these videos, we had to get a drone. You want a great passenger activity, pull out a drone.
On top of the food, scenery, and stops along the way which make a cruise with Kawartha Voyageur so great, you'll also get to enjoy onboard activities.
This has a lot of variation. We get to do a lot of things, stop in a lot of places. Every night we walk wherever we dock.
There's fantastic fishing at some of our overnight stops. On board, we have a number of board games and cards available.
Puzzles, library, reading material.
You don't worry about anything. They have it all planned and very well organized. We just enjoy the worry-free trip.
And we like to keep in touch with our family and our friends and our kids. So it was important to us that they had internet connection on the boat.
The other passengers, after the first day or two, become an extended group of neighbors, just sharing ideas and thoughts.
Well, the opportunity to meet so many new people and could very well turn into lasting friendships.
The small group where you get to know everybody, you get the name tags, we really enjoyed that.
And you feel like you're part of a community that's on the Waterway.
Experience the famous crew night. Take in a game of bocce ball when we're tied up for the evening.
Having the upper deck is beautiful. You can sit up there and you can get the sun, but you can also really see quite a bit.
Special speakers who are experts on wildlife, history, and the area.
Beautiful way to see the country. It's a trip of a lifetime.
So we have a lot of friends along the Waterway. These blue herons are fantastic. As you leave Peterborough going down the Otonabee, there'll be a blue heron sitting on the canal bank, and as the ship approaches, he sort of flies a half a mile down the river, sits on a tree branch or the canal bank, and as the ship gets close, he goes another half mile. For an unsuspecting passenger, every time they look up, there's a blue heron flying, and they think, boy, there's a lot of blue herons around here. It's the same guy, just going with us down the river. We also have a lot of ospreys, and ospreys were kind of having a hard go in life because they were making their homes up on top of hydro poles. Not a very good spot. So along came a group of very good volunteers. Throughout the waterways, they've built manufactured poles with safe spots for the ospreys. Amazing, the ospreys have taken to them, and as we travel along, probably about 2/3 of the osprey nests are now in a very safe structure. A lot of turtles, as I mentioned earlier. We have a lot of protected turtles. This little fellow's not that protected, but we do have quite a few Blandings turtles up on the Rideau Canal, highly protected under our Species at Risk program. The red chairs that you've seen on the top deck now and then, and there's some pictures throughout Canada actually with pairs of red chairs. This is an initiative by Parks Canada a few years ago. They placed red chairs all across our country in national historical sites, national parks, in order to sort of reward you for finding a beautiful spot. Sit down, take a picture, share it with your friends, and it became quite a conversation piece. Here on the top deck of the Kawartha, we too have a pair of red chairs for our passengers to have a special spot and watch the world go by. So folks, you want to know what I do for a living? 39 years I've traveled Ontario watching the world go by. I hope you're enlightened a little bit on what it was like to travel on our nation's waterways, and we'll answer a few questions and answers in a typical presentation. So I've created a few slides of different things that people commonly ask after a presentation. When do you operate? We operate with the same season as Parks Canada. They open the canal system on Victoria Day weekend and they close it at Thanksgiving. So that is our operating season as well. Do you have a liquor license? Yes, we have a liquor license. It is covering all of the common areas of the ship. We have our dining room, our lounge, our outside decks. Can I bring my own, Mark? Well, I carry your luggage. I know what it sounds like. Of course people bring their own, but it's like a hotel. You can't take your own up to the dining room at the hotel. You drink it in your cabin, that's fine. What is your tipping policy? Our company has a zero tipping policy. Tipping has not been on our landscape for 25 years. We feel it's our responsibility to properly take care of our crew. What are your dietary considerations? As I mentioned, we have a set menu. With this set menu, we do no alterations for special diets. The ship is too small to be able to accommodate all those kinds of requests. However, for those of you that have special considerations around diet, please talk to our office ahead of time. Let them know. We'll send you our menu. We'll highlight where areas of concern might be for you, and you can decide whether or not the rest of the package is going to work for you. But we do not make any alterations on board. Can I do back-to-back cruises? We have a lot of passengers that come from afar, and if they come to the Trent-Severn, they want to do the whole thing from Big Chute all the way down to Kingston. So there's times in our schedule that the cruises come back-to-back, and people do take multiple cruises. We also get some passengers that will get on in Kingston, go up to Ottawa, and come right back down to Kingston. They want to see the canal from both directions. So that is, of course, available. The magic question at the end here, how are you preparing for service during COVID? Well, let me tell you, that is the magic question. We have been spending the winter dealing with a lot of mechanical aspects on the ship, especially around airflow, interior quality of air with the use of UV lights and HEPA filtration and ERVs to accommodate air exchange in all our common areas. All that work is being done now to prepare for us to get back in operation. Hospitality and aspects of passenger lifestyle. This is being filmed in February. Our operating season we're looking forward to is in the summer, so it's a little early to judge what some of the restrictions the various level of government will have upon us. We do conform to Transport Canada at a federal level, our provincial level of health, our local municipal chapters of health, and we have to put that entire package together to work through the time frame of this spring. If you have any further questions that you'd like to ask about the presentation or any of the above, please feel free to give us a call. Look us up on the website at the Kawartha Voyageur, OntarioWaterwayCruises.com. And thanks so much for your time to learn a little bit about our nation's waterways.